a good deadline to Wall Street Journal. Hi, I'm Patrick George. I'm the Detroit bureau chief for that publication, and we cover the auto industry and manufacturing, mobility, and occasionally robots. So we do occasionally. The fact that I parked next to a Waymo OI here at this event is a nice reminder that we really move. It's a reminder of what you all know. We move beyond the hypothetical phase for autonomous vehicles over here. It's a very real thing that people are living with every day, starting to more and more. But that kind of begs the question: what form is it intended? Are we talking purely robotaxis? Are we talking consumer applications, personally owned vehicles? Where do those things intersect? And we have some great guests tonight who are going to tell us where they stand on that. So I have Peter Cohen, Terawatt, Tang from Mobility, and Alan Hall from Motional. As you guys, as we discussed earlier, we introduced, I'll say briefly, like what your companies do as we jump into this. Let's start this as a group question. To go along. Like, where do your company see this question at hand? Like, is this shift in mobility a robotaxi matter, or is it a personal vehicle matter? And how are you helping to get to whatever that vision is?
Probably blend the two pieces of my response. But Peter Cohen, nice to meet you all. I lead the AV and Rideshare team at Terawatt. We are a developer, owner, and operator of charging facilities for fleets, so very akin to this topic. So we think things are going to be shared, and as a result of that, need critical infrastructure to support them. So even beyond robotaxi, I think what we're excited about is autonomy being used for new use cases such as food delivery, package delivery, whatever vehicle can be done. All of that with increased efficiency brings costs down, brings access up. But more miles on these vehicles means more charging. These are all EVs. Maybe that's a different panel as to why they're all electric, but predominantly so. But that's a lot of charging power that needs critical infrastructure in metropolitan areas and expansively so, operating extremely reliably. I think we'll talk about that more, but the vehicles need to get in, do their business, get back out on the road so they can perform their tasks, which is not charging. Charging is kind of getting in the way of the business, but if you can have a shared access infrastructure, it really brings those costs down, which we think the model will continue to go in that direction versus personal ownership. Tom?
Yeah, hey everyone, great to be here. I'm Tang, the Chief People and Customer Operations Officer at May Mobility. If you're not familiar with May, we are an L4 autonomous technology company. We take a little bit of a different approach to launching and deploying AVs to the public. So rather than kind of owning the entire vertical ourselves, we have much more of a partnership mindset. So we work with Toyota as our OEM partner to build vehicles at scale. Maybe building on what Peter was saying earlier, we see the future as also a blended model, right? Where in the near term, people will be able to ride autonomous vehicles as a service, right? For example, ride hail. But in the future, we see the path, right, over the next several years or potentially decades towards fully autonomous, like L4 personal vehicle as well. Although I know some maybe are saying it's closer than that. And then building on the blending concept, one of the things that's worth calling out is that at May Mobility, today the workhorse of our fleet is a hybrid Toyota Sienna vehicle, which we're really excited about. It does a great job of getting people around. We also offer a wheelchair accessible version, which is something that we're particularly proud of. But we also have battery electric vehicles that we're working with Toyota on because we also see EVs as part of this feature, and that's really exciting.
Hi everybody, I'm Alan Hall with Motional, and Motional is a company that is backed and partnered with Hyundai Motor Group in the design and engineering and manufacturing of robotaxis for use on mobility networks. We do believe in both the robotaxi on-demand model and in the future personally owned cars. Our focus right now is on developing the robotaxi, and we're partnered with Uber as one of our first partners to go to market. And we're very much, Patrick, you happen to get the two AV companies that are actually backed and partnered with OEMs, so it's a very unique conversation. I think we generally see things from a high level in many of the same ways, and I think your questions will get into some of those intricacies. But yeah, we're on board for both.
Peter, we know that charging for all sorts of EVs is not where it needs to be in America. How much do we need? More than we have now. How's Terawatt helping us to get there? And I want to add also, do you think that the charging needs of autonomous vehicles, personal vehicles, is that in a circle?
I'd say it's very different. Key factors being this is a mission critical asset to a fleet versus, if I go to a grocery store and I'm going to public charging and have a bad experience, or it's not working, or it's not available because maybe it's full. I might be going home to my level 2 charger in my garage if I have that, or it's not, changing my business, my personal life, and I can, do my grocery shopping, maybe go charge somewhere else. If you're an AV fleet or any fleet, Rideshare or anything else, if you have downtime because the charger's not available, is too far away, or it's taken up, say you don't have access to a private depot, and you're going to public charging and you don't have a reservation, that's all time taken away from the job that you're supposed to be doing, which is delivering packages, people, other things. And so to do all that, you need the scale also of a large charging depot in as close to your approximate location as you can get, without having dead miles. So we build purpose-built charging facilities primarily for autonomous vehicle fleets such as Waymo in city centers where, hey, ride-hailing demand today, as the use case needs to be. I think the previous panel touched on some of the complexities of permitting, zoning, and power to enable all of that. But these facilities, there's a lot that happens at them that's not just charging also, so data offload. Aaron was hitting on some of the automation that can be done to facilitate faster in and out of these facilities. So a lot of these complexities create a whole different set of infrastructure than is required from a personal standpoint, and are in oftentimes different locations. So you can separate out me in my personal vehicle at the grocery store from a Waymo or another fleet vehicle that's going to and from its business to keep it more efficient and effective.
Do you feel like there'll be intersection over time, or is it primarily separate?
I think we'll see over time if we can have shared fleet and fleet facilities, and also if you can increase these layers of utilization of the facility, it brings the cost down for everyone. It requires a lot of coordination. I think something exciting, if this panel happens a year from now, 2 years from now, I think we'll be reflecting on the state of the industry, and it's going to be only more ubiquitous, which means we'll have a lot of shared learnings, more familiarity of what this industry needs and how it integrates with the cities and communities around us. I think today it's still in its nascency where there is siloing. We'll see. But I think that efficiency and utilization can help bring costs down, and also just where these facilities are and how they're utilized.
Tom, you've been around since 2017, and so making you an OG veteran in this space. So there's new players popping up all the time. How do you stand out as this space becomes popular by so many new challenges?
Yeah, great question. I think for us it really has been two things. One is our technology itself. So our approach to our autonomy stack is a little bit different than some of the other players. We start with a world model. We build into that onboard vehicle reasoning capabilities. So our cars are thinking like people do as they're driving, right? And so I think in one of the earlier panels, it was talked a little bit about one of the challenges is like pedestrians are difficult, right? Because it's hard to simulate all the things that they may do. And so that's definitely been one of our advantages to scaling our technology is that we have that ability to reason, to simulate, to infer, and we're doing that in a fast enough way on the vehicle to where our cars often will do the appropriate or the right thing in a situation that they've never seen before, right? Like many other companies, we train offline as well. We run simulations, we test our code, etc. But again, we all know there are so many edge cases that take place during driving, and it's important to be able to handle that safely and correctly. The second differentiator for me, I think, is that partnerships approach. So I mentioned, we have a great OEM partnership in Toyota. And then in addition to that, as we are now scaling our ride-hailing service, we're working with companies like Lyft, Uber, and then also Grab in Southeast Asia. And that's been great because they have more than enough demand, for us to be able to kind of keep up.
Perhaps in the long term even, like where do you see your intersection with personally on the vehicle side of things? Perhaps even through Toyota?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Toyota is obviously in the business of making and selling vehicles, right? And so for them, autonomous ride-hail is a great ramp for them to be able to build lots of vehicles at scale for fleets, but they also care equally about selling personally owned vehicles with advanced ADAS and eventually L4 auto capabilities. So that is on kind of their roadmap, and that's a core part of our partnership. One of the things about May that I think is really fun and exciting is that because we started out working in like microtransit, we were working with municipalities and kind of supplementing the existing transportation infrastructure, we got to learn a lot about what the needs of people are in communities, right? A great example is that we still operate in Grand Rapids, Minnesota today, where there's not a great public transportation infrastructure, and unless you own a vehicle and can drive, it's really hard for you to get places. So even when personally owned fully autonomous vehicles are available, they may not be accessible to everyone, right, from a spend standpoint. And so it's great to be able to have those solutions.
Great. Alan, you worked on both the AV startup side and the automaker side of things. And at Motional, do you feel like there is a potential way into full autonomy through more advanced driver aid systems? You can't buy a fully autonomous car right now, but you can get something that drives the answer on the highway. What's that app look like?
Well, I think most of the people in this room, I think, understand that ADAS and AV are very different applications, and they require a different approach, technology, everything. I think that working with an OEM gives us a really strong strategic advantage in terms of starting out understanding the long-term goal and then building your approach around that. So at Motional, I think we are different in that we're making a lot of the hard decisions early. What that means is, from the very founding of the company, we worked within constraints. And a lot of that is from the culture of an OEM, but there's, we had a long-term goal, which I think everybody's long-term goal is to get a sustainable, profitable business, but there's different ways of how you do that when you pull certain triggers, make certain decisions. But we've really focused on that from the very beginning, and that's everything from how we staff, how many cities we're in, how many cars we put into test, how many cars we now are putting in commercial operations, how much Dave, my colleague, is allowed to spend on cloud computing, and that all goes into everything, how we design our technology, how we create our foundation models in terms of efficiency. So I think from a big picture, we're approaching it as, hey, we know where we want to go, and we got to make those hard decisions sometime. Let's do them now and put us in a much better position to get there.
At the outset, you kind of drew a hard line between AS and full autonomy. That's very true. Different technologies, different needs and such, but do they merge over time in your emotional?
Yeah, I think the core bet, I wasn't around for it when Motional was formed, with Hyundai's involvement was, hey, this is a new market for us, this is technology we want, and we are going to make an investment and have Motional focus on the robotaxi market. We do, in the big picture, see that robotaxi is a stopping point on the way to the larger miles driven collective of opportunity. So, and there's personally owned cars, there's trucks, there's long haul, there's all those. So when you really look at the numbers, robotaxi in terms of vehicle miles traveled is really tiny. I think somebody mentioned in an earlier panel. So we view it as that's our focus right now. We're going to do a great job at getting there, commercializing a product, but there's so much beyond, and that's where our partnership with Hyundai, the opportunity is massive, and the future is bright.
Peter, I want to ask, if you're talking about adding the infrastructure that allows AV fleets to deploy scale, what do our urban centers, our cities, our communities, how do they change? How do they look differently in that?
I think the answer would be different. Like we had a year ago, the year we're currently in the future, it's about how do we find from pilot stage into scaled operations, and we're very much in scaled operations today in a number of cities, but in a number of cities in the US also there is no operation. So a lot of education and coordination has to happen to make sure that these facilities and their operations associated are mixing nicely with the cities. And I think if we think about in the future, if today is robotaxis the use case, what could be the additional use cases that come? And what does that mean for infrastructure? We're adapting existing facilities, and then oftentimes in our case, demolishing them to the ground and putting in new charging facilities. But what does that mean for the rest of the ecosystem and how it engages with autonomy? Is there going to be designated pickup and drop-off areas? How do you think about, if you think about food delivery? I think there was someone from DoorDash earlier. What does that first last 100 feet look like from an interaction with the vehicle? So I think we're just in the nascency of what infrastructure at large would be for these autonomous fleets. We obviously focus on the charging, which is, without charging the vehicle doesn't go, so that's a necessary piece of it. There's a lot more, and I think the key for us is very much coordination, education, working from our existing learnings in cities that do have autonomous operations into new cities where we might be launching to say, okay, what worked well? How can we help work this into code, into working with the utilities and their processes? These are heavy off-taking facilities that have a lot of benefits to them. They're very predictable and coordinated. I think that's another piece about autonomy in general that we don't talk about enough, which is the coordination layer can help with a lot of upstream effects for the stakeholders that might be engaged with these fleets. So just, I think education is the key though, to make sure that it all goes smoothly versus people running straight through without the necessary ripple effect that might come from it.
How do you keep up with everything too? I think at the end when we were planning this, I believe you said current infrastructure employees is kind of automatically obsolete infrastructure. We get that very, very quickly, right? How do you keep up with that?
It's definitely a future-proof is a huge part of what we do. So oversight and conduits, making sure that if we're thinking about facility, what does that look like 5-10 years from now? We own the properties that we're developing, which means we're taking a long-term 30-year view look at them. Definitely knowing that what we're building today is our best attempt. That's definitely a coordination with our customers to make sure we're not oversizing, because ultimately it has to work for their use case today or when the facility is ready. But we do definitely see that technology is improving rapidly. Can we iterate a facility's design throughout its coordination before it's constructed? That obviously requires a lot of design and work with the AHJ. But definitely future-proofing, automation, these new features getting added in. We signed up for the task of dealing with that. It's definitely an iterative process, but definitely fortunate to be in a position of working with our fleet customers to understand what works today, what they need in the future, and make sure we have a line of sight to that North Star.
Tom, as we're approaching 10-year anniversary for mobility next year. I want to ask, what lessons have informed where you guys are at taking the strategy? What mistakes or things we should do differently, or victories even, kind of tell me where you're at in this kind of 2.0 era I'm talking about now.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest lessons learned actually for May started before we were even a company. So May Mobility was founded by Edwin Olson. He was previously part of the original kind of DARPA Urban Challenge class, right, that spawned all of the autonomous players, if you will. And after the Urban Challenge, Ed was actually recruited to Ford as a PI and helped to build Ford's first autonomous program. Then he got poached by Toyota to help be a co-PI at Toyota Research Institute to build autonomy. And I think in both of those organizations and situations, what he found himself seeing was that even with massive budgets and a ton of resources, approaching autonomy in the way that maybe many companies started off with struggles to scale, if you will. And again, I touched on the edge cases earlier. And so what ended up happening was Ed left. He went back to the University of Michigan to teach for a while. And as the head of the robotics lab, he came up with this idea of multi-policy decision-making, which is kind of core to our technology and our stack. And that is probably one of the biggest lessons learned, was to approach the technology problem in a different way. The second would be doing everything yourself is very, very hard. It takes time. It's incredibly capital intensive. And so I think the lesson that May has learned over the years too is to try and be as capital efficient as possible. And so I touched on our partnership model when it comes to demand generation. We work with, ride-hailing companies like Lyft, Uber, and Grab. But also, even when you think about, aside from the vehicle platform itself, we partner with insurance companies, we partner with fleet operators, right? So we are looking at the ecosystem and really trying to focus on, let's do the thing that we do best, which is making the cars drive themselves.
That's a great answer. Alan, what does this difference between the tech stack between, fully autonomous vehicle and, a personally owned vehicle? Like how does that pan out in terms of technology?
This is the fun part where I get to play engineer. Well, our engineering team is here, so I'll let you get the real answer after the panel. But in general, I think the thing to think about is a really big part of it is cost. And when you're looking at creating a personally owned car, you gotta think about cost. We're now seeing this in the marketplace, or have been over the last couple of years with EVs, right? EVs are terrific in many ways. First generation was, there was a cost premium to it. And it just limited the appeal and the market size. I think as we look at personally owned vehicles, I think the idea of a level 4 personally owned vehicle is still very far off. So I think we're talking a little bit in the utopia kind of realm, but cost is one of the biggest factors, and in that regard, I think there's still innovation that's happening that will lower costs, also improve the size of the sensors. I don't think that customers want a little LiDAR hat on their car that they buy and have in their driveway.
I think it's neat.
There's some cool stuff being done with it, so I do think it comes down to cost, and cost without sacrificing safety. I mean, I think for most of us in the room, safety is a core, but that may not be the case for some people in the industry. So we have to recognize that, and yes, there's still some generations of innovation I think that we need to hit before we get to the utopia of a personally owned autonomous car.
Last question for the group in closing lightning round. What are the biggest roadblocks to what you're trying to do currently, and what excites you the most about where we're at right now? Okay, well, you're sitting next to me, so that's all. I guess if you want, you can accept roadblocks and what excites you.
So what excites us at Motional is we're commercializing. We now have our cars in service on Uber in Las Vegas in a supervised safety driver format, going driverless at the end of this year. The feedback we're getting is great, and we're learning and seeing a lot that ETAs and ETDs matter. Like that, it's of course safety and driving performance and comfort very important, but ETAs and ETDs are really standing out as like, what do you know? It's a ride-hailing service, so you got to be good at ride-hailing. Roadblocks, as a PR guy, I would say expectations are the roadblocks. And there's expectations at all levels that are need some education to help correct or understand, and then ones that are just hard to overcome.
Tom, please excite you with roadblocks.
Sure, yeah, I think what excites us and what's also a roadblock in some ways is the same thing, and I'll unpack what I mean by that. I think it really is exposing more people to autonomous technology and autonomous vehicles. So that is both what gets me really excited, and it is also a challenge, right? I think the previous panel talked about riding in a Waymo and how it very quickly, for themselves and for their family, became kind of normal and okay, right? And that is something that we, I think, collectively as an industry need to work on together, because my understanding is that if you add up all of the autonomous rides today, right, even with Waymo kind of charging ahead, and then players like Mobility and Motional, collectively I think we represent less than 5% of ride-hailing rides, right? So we're barely scratching the surface. So I'm both excited by that, and I think that also is a challenge, right? Because we need to go faster, we need to scale more vehicles so that more people can try it, and then it becomes kind of part of their daily lives.
I'll piggyback off Tom, maybe at a localized level. I think what we're really excited about is the growth in new markets extremely rapidly and happening all at once. It's not just a next incremental 1-2 city, it's dozens of cities. The challenge in the roadblock being, for the incremental next site we do in Los Angeles, for example, the utility has an EV brake program. The local jurisdiction is familiar. We have charging sites that are live there. It's the next of a thing that's somewhat familiar, still new, but not the first of its kind. It is a process of education, extremely important, but it takes its time in these new cities to work with the AHJs, the utilities, all these coordinated processes. Has to be done right. We're at the leading edge of doing it, and I know we're proud of that responsibility, but it is challenging.
Gentlemen, thank you so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.